Hey, everybody. Welcome to Centered, the podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Braverman, and this is our first podcast. Pretty excited to be doing this. It's been on my mind for a while. And I wanted to do this to share holistic content that reconnects you to your most centered self. This is the place within you that's energized and knowing and uplifted and always there, despite the chaos and the demands of life. So, I wanted to offer this perspective because I have this unique background as both a yogi and a scientist, a movement specialist, and an energy specialist, where I've really spent my life blending different cultures' wisdom together, including my own and over 20 years of guiding clients on their transformational journeys. And I've done everything from healing back pain, which is what I focus on now in my business centered by Leslie, and up-leveling capacity, which actually happens very naturally once you start to live from your centered self. So I really believe that when you're centered, you become this portal of possibility. And I want to share with you in this episode a little bit about who I am and my background. And we're just going to get started with a general conversation. So grab a glass of water or your favorite beverage and let's just talk. So I grew up in Chicago and I grew up north of the city near the lake. I had a great childhood. It was a classic popsicles and slip and slides experience. And I'd say the most unique thing about my childhood is really the values that my parents distilled in us because they have very unique backgrounds in and of themselves. My dad was, before he became a businessman, he was an entrepreneur and he was a martial artist. And so he had a studio where he was teaching Kenpo karate to the locals of the area in the suburbs of Chicago. And he worked with everyone from adults to kids. But he was a pretty high level Kenpo master, and it permeated everything in my life, where he had a Bruce Lee quote for almost every experience that I came to him with. And it just started bringing, Taoism and Confucianism into my life at a very early age. And my mom was like a holistic nutritionist before they existed. And she was a big fan of researching the most up-to-date information on how to keep the family healthy, always through food, always through mindfulness, before mindfulness was even in our culture in the way it is now. And they together, there were three kids in the family, and they were always a very powerful union, the two of them. They met at 16. And so they had a very strong and still do a very strong relationship. I think they just passed over 51 years of marriage. And so that was a big part of my childhood, just their presentation of life. They were also avid travelers, and my mom's side of the family had travel businesses. So we as kids got to travel the world long before we even did it independently. And I really wanted to get out of the Midwest because I have been a lover of the ocean my whole life. And when I was really young, I wanted to be Jacques Cousteau. And I had always been interested in environmentalism, specifically related to coral ecology and health and the health of the ecosystem of the ocean. And so that's what I went and did for my bachelor's. I had a Bachelor of Science, and I was looking into oceanography and, marine biology. And I was just really stoked about that. And in between college and my graduate program, I also have a Master's of Science. I did a really cool program. So it was like a senior year abroad, and I did it through sailing. And I went to sea and did a big program where we did a component on land where we're doing all the learning and designing our research projects. And then we went to sea and enacted our research projects and learned this amazing techniques of sailing schooners, and we did it all the way from Maine through the Caribbean. And it was like one of the most amazing experiences of my life. So amazing that I went back and worked for that organization later, which is called Sea Education Association. If you have kids or are interested in it yourself, I think they have some programs still for adults as well. So you can check it out. And I spent about 3 years working for organizations like the Sea Education Association, where I was working as a scientist. And then I got so interested in all of the sail technology that I also became one of the youngest women in the United States to have a license to operate 100-ton boats and 150-ton boats in inland and near coastal waters. And so that led me into this kind of whole other way of interacting with what I loved, the ocean, and taking people on transformational journeys long before I even started doing it as a yogi. And when I was on the boats, what they always tell you, you go in and you think you're going to be helping people with the research project. And what ends up, because this is humanity, is you're working as an emotional coach and you're working as a spiritual coach long before, you're doing anything else, because everyone's going through so much transformation when you're off the coast in the middle of nowhere. Some of the voyages I went on, we didn't see land for over 14 days, and all we had was each other, and we had to know how to do everything. And so we went through a variety of storms and, both personal and environmental, and the highs were so high, amazing. Think of like standing on the edge of a bowsprit, swinging with a rope into the ocean, people on shark watch, getting that amazing feeling of swimming in the middle of, bright blue water. I had another amazing experience where I was laying on the bowsprit and there was a super pod of probably thousands and thousands of dolphin around me. Everywhere you could see dolphin. It was amazing. We had all sorts of other cool experiences with marine life, from whales breaching to being right next to a whale and having them roll over and have the giant eyes just looking and gazing at you. So it was a spectacular time in my life. And, definitely not something that everybody has experienced. So bringing that into my background now, my work as a coach can really feel into how the ocean has impacted my life. And this idea of taking that into life in other ways has always been something that I've loved. And so now I do things like run retreats in these beautiful places with boat adventures and things like that. So, but back to the story. After I finished that work, I knew I wanted to go to grad school. I also knew that work wasn't going to be fulfilling or like sustainable for life because of the time away from home and the distance. And I had other goals. So I became a scientist, a professional scientist, and I did that for over, I think, 11, 12 years. And I worked all over the US and Canada. It was a wonderful time in my life. And I met some really fabulous people and did some really fabulous projects. I was very focused on environmental cleanup. And all the time I was doing this, I was also a yogi. I had been studying yoga for many, many, many years, really since childhood, since my teens. And I had traveled in between boat jobs all over the US, Canada, India, China, studying with various yoga masters and energy specialists and people who were really at the top of their field, because I was just passionate and interested. And that was one of the values that my parents had always distilled in us children. Was to follow our passion. And so even if you can't follow your passion as, your main job, you can follow it during your holidays or your breaks. And so I did have the opportunity to live in India for a while, and that was really spectacular and really advanced both my personal practice and then, of course, you're honing your transformational skills anytime you live abroad. And I came back and just started to build this into my life in different ways of wanting to continue to travel and expand my knowledge base. And I've always been very thirsty for knowledge, always looking to find the deeper, more esoteric aspects of yoga and movement and how they intersect with what we're learning about the brain and the emotional body and the mental body, and bringing this idea of Eastern and Western wisdom together. And so then I had a couple of kids, and the science work that I was doing, the professional science work that I was doing, wasn't a fit any longer with the demands that I had at home. And the part that really made me see this was I got a super intense back injury where I was just really living so far outside of myself. Even as a yoga teacher, I was still teaching yoga all these years, while also being a scientist and also a mom, and just kind of layering all these outer aspects of life, these other demands out. And there just started to be more and more of them and less of me, which I think can be a very common experience, especially through motherhood. But it can be in any way. As we step more outside of ourselves, we lose that connection to our authenticity more and more. And often there'll be a wake-up call. And this is what I found in over 20 years of working with clients, is there's always some sort of very strong message from your life or from your body. And mine was through my back. And I had multiple bulging discs and undiagnosed postpartum injuries and historical athletic injuries. And everything was coming to a head, all to show me that I needed to make a change, a big pivot, becoming a different version of myself with a different plan. And the experience I had with back pain was really powerful because no one could help me. No one could put all of the pieces together except me. And that was my journey. And so, one of the things that I really focus on when I work with clients, especially for back pain, is to give them the tools to help themselves. Because what we've learned about learning, right, and about making change is that it's all about repetition. It's all about that practice of, and then how to bring it into your life and really make these both biomechanical changes in the body as well as the perception change in the mind. So the mindset piece, and then also being able to handle it within the nervous system and the emotional bodies. And I'm really excited to talk about all these things because this is what I found to be what gives you that last 20% in healing. We can go to other people to heal. We have amazing healers in our culture and extended cultures across the world. But what really changes everything is when we embody it. That last 20% has to come through the changes that we are intentional about within ourselves through practice and through repetition and commitment and devotion. Self-love helps a lot too. So there's a lot to talk about. And let's see where we are. So just finishing up this piece on my history, my background. I have a bachelor's of science. I had a great, amazing experience going to sea and traveling, and then a master of science, a couple of kids who are amazing, and then tremendous experience with my healing my own back pain, as well as working with clients for over 20 years to change their whatever's coming up for them, whether it's back pain or wanting to become a higher capacity version of themselves. So I look forward to hanging out. I'm excited, and let's have some fun together these next episodes. You can reach me at centeredbyleslie.com. I'd love to hear any questions you have or ideas you have for specific focus for the podcast. All right, lots of love, and see you next time. And if that episode resonated with you and you'd like to go deeper into your healing journey, check out my newly released book, Centered: The Art of Living from Within, now available on Amazon. Or head over to centeredbyleslie.com to schedule a no-cost strategy session for wellness coaching, Ayurvedic therapies and herbal consults, back pain healing, and yoga. I'm looking forward to working with you.